And then really my word, I was on holidays. I'd just gone to the place that Andrew had been in the summer. And I was woken up a few times in the middle of the night. And I normally rebuke any waking up in the middle of the night. I normally say, Lord, your word says you grant sleep to those whom you love. This cannot be of you. But on 2 occasions, I found myself writing down, messages from God, one for the Living Hope family, and then one that I thought that I would bring to the conference today. But can I give you a top tip? Don't write it down in a journal you never use, because I lost it. And then said, Lord, on the way down on the airplane, it's 11 hours, please, just give me that one back again. Yes. The Hoover Dam, it was built in 1931. It has 17 turbines. It provides electricity to 1.3 million homes as it harnesses the might of the great Colorado River. At the bottom of the dam, the concrete is 660 feet wide. At the top, it's 45 feet wide. And there it holds back just over 10 trillion gallons of water. Now, what do you do with that amount of water? Well, you can cruise on a boat on it, you can sail on it, you can fish in it, or you can light up millions of lives. And there are many mighty rivers in our world, just like the Colorado, but very few of them are actually put to the use that the Colorado's put to. And I think there's a word here for Ephesians 4:12. There are many great movements across the world, many great movements that have tapped into the river of God, but actually very few of these movements actually channel the power of that river to transform millions of lives. Every summer we have a big outreach, old-fashioned tent outreach on the Isle of Man. We get about summer, that's 23rd of July for us. And we put up this big marquee, and for 5 days we're on the streets. We're sowing as much seed of the gospel as we can. It's in this big field in the center of Douglas, right beside the TT course. And we share the gospel on the streets in the evening. Hundreds of people will gather, and we'll have praise and testimonies and gospel message and healing, and people get saved, and it's an absolute blast. And then after 5 days, the people whom we have rented the marquee off, they come and they take it down, and you'll pass there for a few days, and all the signs on the marquee, having been there, are there for a few days. It acts like a big greenhouse or a polytunnel, because they're big, the grass on the field is maybe growing an inch in 5 days, but actually under this marquee, there are huge wafts of lighter colored green grass, and you can see where the footprint of the marquee was. But you know what? You pass there in a few weeks' time, and it's like, did anything ever take place there? Everything's back to normal. And for me, that was a prophetic picture this summer of the difference between building and blessing in the local church. You see, it's so easy to have apostolic teams coming through and outreach teams coming through for a week or a weekend, and there's lots of godly activity, and there's nothing wrong in that. But often we work in such a way as we don't actually work upon foundations. It's just a one-off event. It's a good feel. It's buzz. It's like somebody said, it's like candy floss, And oh. Where's it gone? Building is much harder work. In the early days of building, you need to dig down deep. You need to dig down as far as you can go, because the depth in which you go at the beginning is going to determine the height you can go in the years ahead. And I believe as a movement, today is really a time over these next hour or so to come back into the plumb line for what it really looks like as a movement to truly build local church on healthy foundations where there's lasting fruit, not the sugar rush of cotton candy in the mouth. Because where there's no foundations, within a short period of time, people forget if anything really was there. And Paul described himself as a master builder. And Jesus said that he was going to build his church. And you know, builders start with a plan, and builders start with a vision in mind, the end in mind. Grant's an architect. You know, he's not going to just throw laborers onto plots. He's going to think it through with people. You know, where are we going? Can we afford the resources here? Is it the right season to dig deep? How can we really build something which will last and stand the test of time? Builders are strategic. They're not just simply people who threw up rooms. Oh, let's add another room. Let's add another story and things like that. I've been in the Middle East and countries where they just do that, and then you see the disasters as well. Yeah, maybe even in South Africa. Would that be true? No, not at all. Okay. You know, in October the 1st, 1971. 5 years after the death of the great Walt Disney, Disney World in California had its great opening. And during the dedication ceremony, someone turned to the widow of Walt Disney and said, isn't it a shame that he didn't live to see this? To which his widow replied, he did see it. That's why it's here. Yeah. And that's what we're called to be as a movement, to see prophetically how God wants us to build, not to build haphazardly, not to add the next new thing on, but to build with the New Testament blueprint in mind, to get the prophetic alongside us, and then to see perfectly how would God have us go. The time for the big marquees and the cotton candy's gone. And this afternoon now, there's a time to realign to how God really wants us to work. You see, the danger in partnering with 412 is, you know, we all love it, but we still can just treat it like a network. We can have people come through and we have like a guest speaker mentality. Oh, they're here to bless us for the weekend. Or maybe there's a new gift on the team. And, let's get this person along. And I've heard they're really good. They're really good at worship. And, they're good in prophetic or they're good in evangelism. It's good. But as I shared with Durbanville a few years ago, God is moving us to the great. And we often sacrifice the great for settling for the good. And that's a blessing mentality as opposed to a building strategic plan in line with the New Testament blueprint. So that's what today's message is, how to build, not just bless. And I was really encouraged. I mean, this is hot off the press. Haven't shared this anywhere else. Because a friend of mine came to me today and said that when I shared this thought, it's been in my mind for a while with him, it actually has transformed his life. He's making substantial life changes now because he realizes it isn't about going from church to church to church with, a little bit of blessing, and that's nice, and, that encourages the people. God has something bigger for us. And so over the last few years, actually, the book of Nehemiah, every time I go on holidays, I just keep reading through the book of Nehemiah. And I've just sensed a rich vein for those of us who are leading local churches, but also those of us who are saints in the life of the local church. And I just want to share 6 insights, a 6-point message. Can you believe that? 6 insights this afternoon into how we can build with our apostolic gifts in 412. Is that okay? Are you still awake for this? Tent, are you still awake? They are. That's good. Okay. Okay. So 6 insights from the book of Nehemiah. And the first insight, you can write this down, is if we're to build, let me say, if you are to build healthily, you need to welcome an external perspective. You need to welcome an external perspective. I have a friend who leads a church in London, a large church in London, and because it's in the center of London, there's a lot of homeless people and down and outs, and they regularly are conducting funerals for those who are homeless because their life expectancy is so much shorter. And normally when a homeless person is buried, has a funeral, it's maybe 10 or 20 people show up. But on this occasion, like the church was packed. It was like this. It was rammed for this homeless person's funeral. It was a bag lady, see her pushing the shopping trolley, and she died, in a cold winter's night. And they discovered afterwards, after speaking to, they're just, why there's so many people here, that actually this bag lady was a multi-millionaire in pounds, not in Zimbabwe dollars, in pounds, yeah. Okay, multi-millionaire in pounds. She had, but because of her brokenness, she actually was more comfortable living in the garbage. She was a millionaire living a life of a tramp. But it's not just homeless people like that who can be comfortable in their brokenness. Can I say this? Sometimes church leaders can be comfortable in their brokenness. They've never known any other way to live. Or community group leaders or deacons or whole eldership teams have kind of functioned in this dysfunctional way for an entire generation. And they've actually got used to it. And it's the norm. And yet there's this inheritance for them in the nations. But they go through in their own little closed mindset. And they don't welcome that external perspective. And often that's seen in disunity in the church or team, a lack of passion for Jesus, that brokenness, a lack of passion for the gospel, a lack of love amongst the saints, shrinking churches. And as I looked at Nehemiah, I really just felt God speaking to me. And I'm just going to quickly go over this. You know the story of Nehemiah and the rebuilding of the walls. And he hears news in Nehemiah 1:3-4. And they said to me, the remnant there in the province who survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken and its gates are destroyed by fire. And then you read, as soon as he heard these words, he got down, he prayed, and he fasted. Let's be honest, the remnant were comfortable living amongst the ruins. The remnant had got used to that way of life. This is what it is. The walls are broken down for our protection. The gates that would open things up for us, well, they went years ago. And they became accustomed to that level of brokenness. But when the word of the Lord reached Nehemiah, there was a grace on his life to enable those people to transform their situation. Now, there's a huge difference between Nehemiah and apostles. Nehemiah had a level of governance on him where he could literally just come in and tell the people the problem, and they quickly responded to him. It doesn't work that way with apostles. Because apostles work out of relationship. And as local elders and saints and deacons and local churches, we need to see that grace in those 4:11 gifts. And in our own humility and our own weakness, invite them to come and give us perspective and turn the ruins around. We all know that personally we need an external perspective to come into the more of God, don't we? I often tell that these 2 weeks are the worst 2 weeks of my life every year because I stay with Andrew and MC often, and it's with fear and trembling, at the end of it. I learned the first time they said to me, do you see anything in our lives? I'll just quickly tell the story. I go, no, you're the perfect marriage. You're the perfect. Do you see anything for anything? Well, Jonathan, let me just talk into your life and your marriage, yeah. So we all know that at a personal level, we need external perspective, and we need to welcome it because we all have personally areas that are blind spots and brokenness. We're no different. But whether personally or as local eldership teams, we need to have courage to open up the door. And we need to have courage to welcome external perspective. And here's some questions we need to have the courage to ask if we're going to build something rather than just having that marquee which is here today and gone tomorrow. Will you share with us where you think we're broken as a church? When an apostolic team comes through, the best thing you can say is, rather than, I've heard there's this gift or that gift, just say to them, okay, I've heard they're good gifts, but why don't you just come in and why don't you show us one thing over the next year that we could change to bring us into the more of God as a team? Now, we do that individually, don't we? Let's be honest. Nobody wants, I've got a great car mechanic. He's in the church now. He's a member of the church, which is great. There are great blessings associated with that. A bad because he'll not tell me the problems. He'll just sort them out, But a bad car mechanic, you'll take with one problem, then they'll give you a list as long as your arm, yeah? You don't want that. But you do want to have the courage to say to your apostolic team, what one thing do you think we could change that could move us into the more of God? Does that make sense? And I think also when we're helping one another personally grow, we need to learn, don't give them a list of 10 things. Start off with a list of just one thing. What one thing? Paul says in 2 Thessalonians 3:9-10, for what thanksgiving can we return to God for you, for all the joy that we feel for your sake before the Lord, as we pray most earnestly night and day, that we may see you face to face and supply what is lacking in your faith. Until we see Jesus, there are always going to be things lacking in our faith personally and as local churches. And as local churches, that's why we need those 411 gifts and a lead apostle to come in to show us where we are lacking. Not just simply to show us where we're lacking, but to show us how to move forward. Because sometimes, like the bag lady, we're so comfortable with this. This is just the way it's been. We don't know anything different. How could we move forward? But that's the grace gift that they have on their lives. So there are areas where we all lack. And the problem is that most of us don't know what we don't know. Most of us just don't know what we don't know. I'm going to say it again because it's just dropping to the back. Most of us just don't know what we don't know. And here you see this external perspective that comes in Nehemiah, and he doesn't shame the people. He inspects the walls by night, and because he wants the people to win. And then in 2:17, you just see the heart that he has. Then I said to them, you see the trouble we are in, not you're in. You see the trouble we're in, okay? We're in this together. How Jerusalem lies in ruins with its gates burned. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer suffer derision. Often we've been walking in circles for years going nowhere, and it's only through that external voice that the call to change is actually taken on board by the people. Like a lead apostle like Andrew just sweeps people in to that change. You may have tried to fix it on the external kind of tweaks for years, and you say, we've never changed, they're just a stubborn people, all that type of thing. That's because you haven't had the right grace gift in to enable you to change your church. So let me just share with you, I am recalibrating us all today. You're all on the seat. Yeah. We need to welcome the external voice. And I just repeat it, guys, ladies, we need to be intentional. I'll reach in even further. Don't ask for the new wham super gifts. Ask how could we build in the next year. Just pretend you don't know the answer. And just ask, what do you think? I'm sensing this. What do you sense? Yeah. Is that good? That's a good insight from Nehemiah. Is that an amen? That's good, okay. And then secondly, we need to clear away the rubble. This is, when we start building, there's rubble we're going to have to clear away. Often, as leaders, when it comes to embracing change, we're like the two guys in the movie Weekend at Bernie's. Let me just say, I don't know what rating that movie is, but it was B before I met Andrew, right? It was before I met Andrew, so, yeah. Now I only watch Nacho Libre and cheesy Christian movies, okay? That's, so we need to clear away the rubble. Weekend at Bernie's, here's the storyline. These two young guys, probably just getting ready to go to university. They've got a summer job in this office block, and they get really close to the owner, and he says to them, if you work your Botox off for the next 6 weeks, then you can come to my condominium, you can use my speedboat, we'll just party all weekend. And they do work hard, but sadly, the day before they're due to go, Bernie dies. And they're thinking, what should we do? Well, the whole premise of the movie is they spend the whole weekend making Bernie look alive. So they put him in the car, they have him at the party, they have him water skiing as a corpse, And they spend all their weekend making this dead thing, which is starting to stink, actually look alive. I mean, the energy they're putting into making something which died a while back look alive is phenomenal. I've been there as a church leader. That thing died years ago. There's no life on it at all. But I'm going to make it look as if it's alive. It lives. Are you with me? Let me give you a top tip. Right? Do you know what you need to do when something has died? Dig a hole, bury it, say a few words over it, move on. So I have transitioned unhealthy congregations into congregations which are starting to look a little bit more like what the New Testament says local church would be. But let me tell you, when I first met Andrew, oh my goodness, it was just overwhelming. Yeah. Yeah. You kind of think to yourself, where do you start? There's so much rubble. There's just so much of it. And actually, it can be overwhelming. In Nehemiah, we read that the strength, in Judah, all around it was said, the strength of those who bear the burdens is failing. There's too much rubble. By ourselves, we'll not be able to rebuild this wall. And by yourself, we won't, as local churches and elders, we won't be able to rebuild the walls. By ourselves, individually as saints, we won't be able to be transformed. We need that external perspective. We need to start clearing away the rubble. But if we'll open up ourselves to a wider team of people who have wisdom and insight, then we'll start to make the changes that will glorify Jesus. Now, sometimes you do need to bring the Ephesians 4:11 gifts through, and they will be like Jeremiah. Do you remember it says in Jeremiah 1:10, see, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down. Yeah. Because sometimes like an architect would come on site or a builder comes on site and you kind of go, you've built that? I mean, if you leave that up, like when the winter comes and the first wind catches that's gonna hurt people. So sometimes, you don't see it because that's not your grace. But sometimes we do need to tear down. I'll not tell you, I'll be here all afternoon if I told you what Andrew had to tear down in us. Yeah. I think it was just on Facebook the other day, some pictures of houses it was maybe a place near Mossel Bay. Somebody here had shared it, and there was subsidence and all these houses. There were families that had been living in the houses for a couple of years, and they've invested everything in it. And then suddenly all these families have had to move out of their homes. I mean, imagine if somebody had to help them before they started putting it up, get the foundations right and do the proper tests there. They would have saved so much hurt and heartache and cost. Yeah. And likewise, it can be painful when you start to work with those 4:11 gifts. And it is expensive to make some of the changes because, like Chris at the moment, he has an older house than me. His builders told him, yes, you've got dry rot in one room. Then the builders started. They haven't stopped. Just in case they're going to take up an offering, He's now at 8,000 pounds. And actually, when you start, here's the problem. I don't want to scare you, but when you start poking at the rubble, oh my goodness, that brick's wobbly as well. And it is sore, but actually, if I just throw something else up against that, oh my goodness, it's going to damage other things. So you can't turn a blind eye. But if we want to build well, and most of us don't have the benefit from starting from scratch. Those who went to the church planting school did. And certainly the 411 gifts, I particularly would love to speak to you if you went to the church planting school. So you can, others of us would love to give you time to give you a kick and get you moving. But for all of us, don't have that privilege of starting from scratch. And even if you do start from scratch, let's be honest, you'll still make mistakes along the way. But we need to clear away the rubble. Does that help? An insight? Yeah. And then thirdly, always think team. Here's insights. This is Old Testament, but we're going to go in the New Covenant. As a child, even though my parents were great and godly believers, they used to allow me to watch the Hammer horror movies. Anybody watch those, the black and white ones? Too godly. Before I met Andrew. Okay? And I remember one of those movies was called The Hand. Has anybody seen The Hand? Okay. Well, the premise of the movie, The Hand, is that in an accident, the hand has been severed from the body and it has been exposed to radiation. Really, yeah. It was exposed to this hand that was severed from the body and was exposed to radiation. And because it was exposed to, one more time, radiation, it had a life of its own. And there's all this music, and the doorbell rings, and the woman goes to the doorbell, and she looks around, there's nothing there, but all of a sudden, from nowhere comes, the hand. I do encourage you to watch that movie. But there's only one problem with the hand. It doesn't work that way. It has no life on its own. And just as every saint needs to be connected to a life-giving local church, every church needs to be planted in an apostolic sphere or an apostolic field in order to have proper life, in order to have connection properly to the head. And then those 411 gifts can't lord it over local elders, but then those 411 gifts can come alongside local elders and be invited in. Please come and help. A Macedonian call. Please come and help us. What are you seeing? And since we're called to be like Christ, this is the way that Jesus worked. He had the 70. He had the 12. He had the 3. He even had the 1. Jesus continually modeled team. In Paul's Ephesians 4:11 gifts, there were probably over 40 men and women who were partnering with him in his apostolic field in order to get the churches healthy, in order to build with local churches, not give them cotton candy that would be here today and gone tomorrow, but seeing strategically where they lacked, sending in the right gift for periods of time so they could become healthy. And when it comes to building, team is vital. Just look at any building site as you're driving during the daytime, and you'll see on it architects and quantity surveyors and brickies and plasterers and roofers and plumbers. So there are all sorts of gifts in order to make that house look pristine. And the truth is, we need all sorts of gifts to make this church glorious for the return of Jesus. We read in Nehemiah 4 that when our enemies heard that it was known to us and that that God had frustrated their plan, we all returned to the wall and each to his work. I'll not read the rest of the passage because time is flying. But you know that Nehemiah set the men and the women and the fathers and sons all around. Nobody was isolated, okay? Nobody was isolated. Nehemiah had them working strategically. He had them working as a team, covering certain parts of the wall, keeping an eye out for the enemy, being ready for battle. And if you're a leader here today, no matter what you're leading, whether you're leading a local congregation or church or community group or ministry in the church, or you're a saint here today, we always need to work in a way that builds teams. Loners are dangerous, aren't they? And there's 3 questions, actually I found transformational for me, 3 questions that I always ask myself when I'm trying to build anything. Number 1, I know it's teaching Granny to suck eggs. Number 1, what needs to be done? Number 2, what can others do? Number 3, what must I do? We're going to see how quickly this wall was built, but can you imagine what would have happened if Nehemiah had have said, right, guys, I'm the apostolic team in one, come and watch. Right, here we are, we're in this part of the wall, come and help me do this part of the wall. Then we've got that done, come and help me do this part of the wall. And then come and help me. But I think so many of us in local church, that's how we minister. Our whole purpose is to bring the saints into more, to equip the saints for the works of ministry. So we need to actually divide them up, release them to their part of the wall, okay? What needs to be done? What can others do? Think that way. Don't be the cork in the champagne bottle. I mean, as leaders, we need to be catalytic. So when a catalyst comes in to a solution between 2 elements, because of its presence, this is what apostolic, I think, is. It's catalytic. Because of the presence of the catalyst, it causes a reaction between the 2 elements, but it neither adds nor subtracts to itself. So you go and plant a new congregation. It isn't built around you. But because of your gift and your grace and your empowering of them, suddenly you can cause a reaction between other people. You can cause something amazing and new to be built. Now, I know that I know as elders, we do need to get involved, but I think there's a weight in this. We need to work differently. 412 is all about team, and it's not about the 411 gifts. We're desperately trying not to use the language of team for people who maybe are seen more on the platform. It's the saints who are the team. It's the saints who have the inheritance. And even in the likes of Nehemiah there, you're starting to get a glimpse. He's mobilizing the people to do a great and mighty work. And that's the calling on our lives as well. The more the saints go in outreaches, the more the saints go into the nations, the more that they come back and the spotlight is on them. That's the win in the kingdom of God, yeah? Can I do a few more? Just a few more insights? Tent, can I do a few more insights? Okay, here we go. Okay, that's good. But who knows, change is challenging, so you need to, before you start anything, you need to anticipate the challenges. Nobody, suck it up, Jonathan, suck it in. Ugh. Nobody likes change. Right? If you haven't been running for a year or 2 and you start running, ouch. If you haven't been to the gym for a year or 2, in our congregation, the guys are just starting to play 5-a-side soccer every Saturday night now, starting this Saturday night, 5 p.m. I arrive home Saturday lunchtime. I've said I'm going. Like, I remember the last time I did this, I couldn't move. Just you're indoor, you heat up, you just can't. So nobody likes change. Your body will cry out to stay in the status quo, won't it? And the church is no different. When we've learned, how to be flabby, this is kind of it. How are we going to bring change? There's going to be challenges, a new diet, a new time to get up, a new way of exercise. And what we need to remember is that challenges come from both from without and also from within. And let me be honest, the outward challenge shouldn't concern us. I mean, it should, but it shouldn't. I mean, the danger is the inward challenge. Because when there's no unity, then we no longer have a grace of commanded blessing in our lives. And so Nehemiah, as he's rebuilding the walls, he has all these challenges. And two of them are Sanballat and Geshem. And we read in Nehemiah 6 that they say, come on, let's meet on the plain. But Nehemiah knew deep within, oh my goodness, they just want to have a conference. They intend me harm. Lord, strengthen my arms. Keep me on the wall. But there can be distractions. Let me just warn you, there will be distractions come your way. And when we started transitioning, when we started changing, distractions were absolutely phenomenal when you start to build properly. I mean, there's flack that comes, but there's protection as well. You start building the right way. And then it also came quickly from within. Time's almost gone. It also came from within, and you see the reference there in verses 10, 11, and 12. And at that time, the Jews, verse 12, who lived near them came from all directions and said, 10 times you must return to us. It was bad enough, the external stuff, but then you had this in the camp. And did you notice who were the most mouthy? Those who lived nearest. The Sanballat and Tobiah. And we need to be careful who we're listening to. We can't be closed-minded, but we do need to be careful who we're listening. Listen to the right voices. And in every church, we need the saints. We need input, but we need everybody to be sails, not anchors. Sails, not anchors. So anticipate the challenges. To get a body into shape, there are going to be challenges, right? The body's going to scream a bit, but in due season, you'll see the reward for your work, yeah? But anticipate, don't go stupidly into it. We're going to get, through the apostolic. That's why you need the apostolic and the prophetic. Okay, what in God do you sense might be coming against us as we make these changes? Okay. And then we're almost there. We need to believe God for the miraculous. I'm amazed how quickly we can transition. It doesn't have to take years. I'm amazed just if we'll build God's way, suddenly the blueprint of heaven becomes alive on earth. Sometimes because of fear, we don't throw ourselves into it, but we need to overcome that fear in God. And I love what happened to the people of God there. It says in Nehemiah 6 that it took them 52 days. Imagine that. And all their enemies were astounded. 52 days to rebuild the walls and to put the gates in place. Their name was restored. Their honor was once again on the people. This last June, we had a great conference, European conference. It was hosted again on the Isle of Man. And through mutual friends, we had this couple come from Dublin. A couple called Hammy or Tommy and Brenda Hanrahan. And they're from a church called Firebrand Church in Dublin. And so that was the first time we met them. This is the middle of June. Think of this, middle of June. And they came quite skeptical and they sat in the second row and then they saw Val. Every day and every way. I'm getting better and better, yeah. Then they saw, and he kind of came from an old school Pentecostal, kind of more legalistic. Legalistic. But then lo and behold, Val pulls him up. And he told us afterwards that, what he was praying was, do not prophesy over me. Do not prophesy. And Val started to prophesy how they are in an inner city. It's an area of 100,000 people. I grew up in the Troubles in Northern Ireland. That was easy in comparison to where they are. So it's all drugs, gangs, prostitutes. That's the church. Just a new church. There was about 30 people at that time. And it's just wild. I feel safer in Cape Town. So does Andrew, yeah. Tommy, I think, has been shot 3 times. Last time it was a son of shotgun. Blew him right across here, right? And so Val starts praying and just hitting it right on the money and prophesying over it, and immediately Tommy is poof, and on the ground. And the flesh in him was trying to get up, but he couldn't move, yeah. And about an hour later, he could move, yeah. But something happened in him. And Andrew and I visited about 2 weeks later, and we stayed with them in Dublin, and we went to their church. And they shared their testimony and story, and just they immediately said, we need to partner with 412. But do you know what really encouraged Andrew and I? It wasn't, we need to partner with 412, what cotton candy can you send us? There was just an openness. They asked questions. You know, what do you think we should be doing? And this past weekend, Adrian and Maddie Porter, who lead one of our congregations, they were there. And I don't know if you've seen some of the pictures on Facebook. I'd said to Andrew, like, this is a different church. That's 3 months. One thing we dropped into them, was you need to move venue. Like, I don't feel safe in this venue. And they have moved in. We're over 50 people now. People that were saved on the weekend that Andrew preached there have been baptized since. They're on the streets evangelizing. They're bringing other people to Christ. Like, that's 90 days. And let me be honest, we are working in some churches probably years, and we have yet to see that real attitude. We may drop something in, because Andrew would never want to lord it over anybody. But it's like, we go back next year, year after, or everything's on the long hoof. Oh, we're going to do that. But it's being dragged out. And now Firebrand Church, it's probably over 50 people now. I've seen people saved weekly. There's huge governmental. We need to help them governmentally and all that type of thing. But believe God for the miraculous. A miraculous 52 days it took. But actually, it's going to take the right, where do you think I should be? What do you think we should be doing? Not somebody telling you what to do, but, you have the wisdom. It's the 411 that brings the 412. The local elders, we need to just get this. Because I was leading 4 churches, now 5, before we joined 412. People would say, but you're leading this and that. It's the apostolic that brings the saints into their destiny. It doesn't say that elders are here to equip the saints for works of... It says the 411 gifts. Elders working with the 411 gifts. And so you see, like, even in Acts, Solomon, how quickly Solomon's colony had thousands of people meeting there. It's miraculous. And I think with Saul, Andrew was sharing about Saul, he knew the book inside out, but, when there was an encounter with Jesus, everything changed. And that's what I saw in Tommy and Brenda. And a Holy Spirit encounter that day in that conference. And I think some of us need that today. Some of us are leading congregations or leading community groups. I am Mr. Handels, but actually, we need to believe God for the miraculous. And like Saul, we haven't been kicking, we're just plateauing, we're decreasing, we haven't been able to change, I've still got those bad attitudes in the church, blah, blah, blah. If you'll respond today, I really believe that Saul knew the word back to front, but one encounter with Jesus changed him forever. Okay, let's conclude. And as we conclude, I just need to reinforce, however, the building is not an event. I'm talking about, do respond today. A building is not an event, it is a process. I remember reading a news story of an Arctic expedition team. Don't send me to the Arctic, please, to plant the church, Lord. No, do send me to the Arctic to plant the church. I never say no. Yeah. And there's this expedition team walking to the North Pole, and 3 days in, they discovered, looking at their GPS, that even though they'd been walking hard every single day, their GPS was saying they're further south than where they started. They're going... And so they kept testing their equipment, they kept walking and walking and walking. Then they suddenly discovered that they were going forward, but the ice flow was moving faster south. And you and I need to know that culture around us is changing faster than any other time in history. I mean, this isn't a little, in the Manx, they say trade allure, mañana attitude. I mean, this needs to be intentional, setting our faces as flint, pressing forward, straining for the goal. We can't afford to take the long way round for this. We need to kind of move into a mode of acceleration today. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring us in the plumb line of what it really looks like to partner with an apostolic team. And so you can read there for yourself. Time's gone with me, but in Nehemiah 13, Nehemiah has to go back a couple of times. And every time he comes back, oh my goodness, I brought all this change about, and they haven't been tithing properly. They've got the wrong people in the wrong positions. They aren't organizing the Sabbath. They're kind of people who are buying and selling on the Sabbath. You know, everything just slips into a malaise. So don't be thinking that we make one little change and then our worship is set forever, or our elders are set forever, or things like that. Nehemiah had changes to confront all the time. Paul spoke of, we heard it this morning, the Galatians, you've embraced another gospel. After starting in the Spirit, how's this happened? In 1 Corinthians, he talks about another Jesus, another gospel, another Spirit. This is why it can't be a one-hit wonder of an apostolic gifts going in. We need to continually have the gifts coming in throughout the year to keep us right alongside the plumb line. Right up until the moment Jesus returns, we're going to need to be partnering together and welcome the external perspective and clearing away the rubble and moving forward together. Here's the scariest verse Andrew's ever read to me and my leaders. 1 Corinthians 3, 10-15. According to the grace of God given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation and someone else is building on it. Let each one take care how he builds upon it. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now, if anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become manifest, for the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burnt up, he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only as one through fire. That scares me, that picture. When we started to transition, I said to Andrew, it was as if God in his mercy allowed sparks to come through. I mean, if you're having leadership problems and unity, if you're having shrinking congregations, if your finances are being hit at the moment, this may not be a demonic attack. It may actually be just the sparks that the Lord is throwing out now, so that on the last day, you've actually corrected and you've built something which lasts, something which stands the test of time. We need builders. We need people who are going to work with these 411 gifts to bring the church fully into her destiny. And I do think as builders today, repentance for Acts 2, repentance opens up rivers of refreshing. And I do think for us all today, whether we're saints, not welcoming the external perspective, not willing to address the things in our lives, or whether we are elders or lead elders, we need today to be open to God. We need to embrace all that He has for us, repentance, and see springs of refreshing. So let's prepare our hearts, maybe as whoever's on keys and band comes back, we just respond to God right now. Let's come with an attitude of humility before God. Let's be honest, you all are going to be builders. But there are two types of builders in life. There are wise builders, and there are foolish builders. There are wise builders who build on the rock. The rock isn't just simply building on Jesus. The difference between the wise and the foolish wasn't what they heard. We've all heard the same thing here today in both locations. But wisdom was how they applied what they heard.